my name is Ryan Peck.
And I'm Nicole Barlow.
And this is Soundtrack Your Life, where we speak with a guest about a soundtrack that is important to them. Returning to the podcast today is pop culture writer and host of the NSYNC podcast, Rachel Brodsky.
Welcome
back, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
So, Rachel, since the last time we had you on the podcast, I have seen your name in the byline at Time Magazine.
Yes.
So tell me, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
I was asked to do the Time 100 online interview with Dua Lipa. So Dua Lipa was one of the Time 100 people, most influential people this year, and it was kind of said like under their breath, well, we need someone to interview Dua Lipa. It's for Time 100. Don't tell anyone. It was like very like on the down low. So I didn't tell anybody anything. And I went to her photo shoot, and then they do a video portion of like, it's like first photo shoot, then we do a video. And so I asked her a load of questions for 30 minutes, and then that was like cut into a 3-minute video, and then the rest of it I wrote up into her profile, which lives online. It is not in print. I was told very specifically that Time, like for the way they do it, is that they have other incredibly influential people. In this case, they had Patti Smith write a tribute to Dua that does live in print, and I mean, you can't compete with Patti Smith.
Sure.
My hero as well. And so that's what was in print. But if you want to go to time.com, you can still read my profile of Dua. I'm really proud of it for many reasons, and just to be featured in Time Magazine, I mean, it's something that I've read Time Magazine since I was old enough to be able to read it all. So I'm very proud of that. I've been very happy and proud. But I also, like, when it came out, it was maybe 8 weeks after the fact, so I kind of mentally moved on, and then I was like, oh well, here it is. Yay!
You're like, oh, remember that time I met Dua Lipa?
Yeah, she's incredibly poised. That was my main takeaway. She's one of the most poised people I've ever seen in real life, and she's incredibly well spoken and thoughtful. I don't think she gets enough credit for that. She's a very engaged person.
How tempted were you to ask her if she is always on vacation?
Well, I tried to frame it as, well, first off, I don't think she's on vacation anywhere near as much as people think she is, because that girl works.
Waterworks, yeah.
She's always planning, always plotting. That was a huge theme in the discussion, and I could tell just by being with her that girl is type A. She writes everything down. She's got a plan for every day, let alone every week. She's got like a 5 to 10 year plan for herself. Wow, she utilizes every minute, and honestly, like, I wish I had that level of energy, because I think of myself as being a pretty ambitious person, but I also need to like temper it with real downtime in order to like keep achieving. And she's always on. So when that rumor or whatever it is, like her, I guess, always on vacation, reputation came up at some point, like people like were teasing her online about always being on vacation. I thought it just doesn't square with the person that I had met. So I did try to ask, like, hey, so when you do take time off, what are some things that you pack? Like, how do you relax, basically? What are some books that you want to bring with you on your next trip? What are some podcasts you want to make sure you download? That's how I tried to frame it in the positive. that wasn't the place. Like it's
right.
Sometimes when you go into interviews, like you know what's going to be, okay, we're here to celebrate this person and talk about why they matter, talk about why you should care. That was the prime example of that sort of interview, as opposed to this is like a cover story situation where I'm spending like 2 days with the subject and it's more, say, objective. I mean, this was meant to be a celebratory piece. So like, how do you talk about that, like that kind of thing in a celebratory way? Well, let's reframe it this way, instead of saying, hey, why are you always on vacation?
Right. Well, this is why Rachel is writing and interviewing Dua for Time Magazine, and Ryan and I aren't.
Well, that's why I said, were you tempted to? Because I know you're too professional to actually do that.
But it's an amazing piece. Everyone should read it. That's prestige. I feel like you're adding prestige to our podcast right now. I mean, you say Time Magazine, and you're like, wow, I'm going to tell my parents about Time Magazine.
Thanks.
She was adding prestige when she was a writer at Stereo Gun.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, you just did racking them up, Rachel. Incredible.
Thank you. It's always a lot. Like I'm really proud of it. These are things that happen when you've been doing this as long as I have. I guess sometimes I try to like almost not to take it down, not to like diminish, because I am super proud of it. But sometimes I think it's like easy for your, I don't know, friends, colleagues, familiars to forget, like, hey, I've been doing this for like 15 years. And I know some friends who they just came right out of journalism school. And so for me, like, I had to kind of claw my way. One day I'll tell you about like just the beginnings of my career when I was working at a parenting magazine, and that's how I got my start in traditional editorial, was working at parenting guides, and incrementally from there. So I kind of never thought I'd get to a place, but now, so like the child in me or whatever, like the young professional in me still kind of feels like that young hopeful that works at the parenting magazine, who like dreams of one day. So anyway, again, not to like diminish, because I'm super proud of it, but I'm also like, yeah, you've been working for this, and also treat it like any other gig. You know what I mean? Like, don't think about it too much.
Yeah, well, no, you're a seasoned pro. You're a seasoned pro. You were born to do this, and you have the restraint not to just try to like reach out and touch Dua Lipa's like shiny hair, which is what I would.
Well, I was amazed at her face. Like, I just wanted to be like, girl, drop the skincare routine. Like, wow.
She's like
she glows.
To me. So it's like like reading the piece, I'm like, oh, Dua Lipa is a real person to me now, I guess, because she doesn't feel real, unattainably like.
Yeah, she does appear airbrushed. I was just like, this girl has no pores.
Yeah, good to know.
But she's really smart. Like, she's a very engaged, tapped in, plugged in person.
Smart enough to turn down Coachella. Sing.
You couldn't resist the Coachella thing.
Did she turn it down for next year?
For this past year.
Okay, I read that. I saw a rumor that she's going to be headlining next year.
Yeah, when they hopefully got their shit together.
Yeah. I don't know. I won't be there. I can't do Coachella. That's beyond me. That's beyond my energy level.
Yeah, this feels like a really good time to shift into the dad rock we're going to talk about today, which anti-Coachella.
If it was like Coachella for dad rock, I would be there.
Yeah.
Same.
Because just the energy would probably be more my energy, because like I'm like dad age now.
I am a dad. So Rachel, on NSYNC last season, you guys did an episode on Taylor Swift's love story from The Bear.
Yeah, one of my favorite anal drops of all time, I think. Like, that's gonna live on for me.
So that's why we wanted to bring you today to the podcast, because Nicole has asked me to watch all of The Bear, season 1 and season 2, and I think it's good to talk about it before season 3 drops next month.
Yeah. Wait, Ryan, How long did it take you to watch season? Did you binge season 1 and season 2? And are you okay now after that?
Like mentally.
Like, yeah, like mentally, like,
Sorry.
is your body and your brain, like, are you okay? Because that's a lot.
I think I needed like a day or two after the Christmas episode for sure.
Oh my God.
Yeah, for sure. Fishes will get you.
Oh yeah, and just if you're listening, there's gonna be tons of spoilers. We've never been a spoiler-free podcast. We're gonna talk about a lot of needle drops and spoilers, so don't be a Madison Park dickhead. We're gonna spoil some stuff. But yeah, so this is gonna sound really lame, but first, when Nicole had brought up the bear, I assumed it was like 22 episodes, every episode an hour long, and I was like, I can't do 44 hours of prestige TV right now.
It feels longer than it is because of the amount of energy it's requiring of you.
Yeah, it's incredible that you can tell so much story in half an hour. Most of the episodes are about half an hour. And that you can cram all these needle drops into half an hour as well.
Yeah.
That is impressive. Yes. Yeah.
So we are talking about Chris Stohr's The Bear, which is on Hulu through FX. I've seen recently like, oh, check out the Disney Plus series The Bear, and I was like, that is not correct.
That's not square. That's something from FX. I'm like, this is incredibly wrong. This is not a crossover event.
No, that's like branded badly.
So bad. But yeah. We are here today because Ryan finally watched The Bear because I bullied him into it. Like this is like months of bullying that led to this podcast today because I'm obsessed with this show and I'm obsessed with the needle drops in this show. And I think that it has a lot of music supervision in it that is very non-traditional and very much like not what you would expect of a prestige show, if you want to even call it that. I think it's almost kind of like the anti-prestige in some respects.
No, I think that would be the curse, but...
Oh, I want to talk about the curse. Do you mean like it wasn't like you felt like it was the anti-prestige based on the soundtrack or just based on the whole setup?
A little bit of both because I feel like there's a lot of, maybe they make too much out of this like in the media, but when they interview the showrunners and creators, so they're both the showrunners and the creators are actually the music supervisors for the show too. And I think part of it is the show's kind of scrappy, much like the characters themselves. It's not a big production show or it didn't start that way. And so to cut costs, they're like, no, we're doing this and we're doing it like a mixtape. And they've said in interviews that their intention was really to choose things that are kind of not cool in a way. There's this article that they put up, I think, on GQ last year. And it just kind of posits like, is, dad rock like this secret sauce for like the bear? And I think that that's kind of uncommon because they could have gone a different direction. In a prestige show, you might choose things that were from like the last, 5 years that felt a little bit more like cutting edge or something. Mm-hmm. It's not trying to do any of that. It's like serving you Counting Crows. And it's
that's why I love it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to me, it like does read prestige. That's funny. I hadn't really thought about prestige as it relates to the soundtrack and how that connects to the show. And I guess, yeah, like in my mind, there's been a flattening, and not just my mind. I think culturally with pop music, there's been a flattening of what we consider to be prestige because like the whole 90s rock culture and music writers being like rockists and being so dismissive of pop music. And that doesn't exist as much at all really today. And instead you get, I've talked about this a lot and I've probably talked about it on here too, because I can't keep track of how often I talk about it. But when I was coming up as a music writer, it began like I came up in the realm of poptimism where pop music was starting to be revered and written about and considered in just as highbrow a fashion as rock music used to. It wasn't being dismissed anymore. And I guess I hadn't really thought about like, and I mean, I was gonna say that there is kind of a downside to that, like this sort of equality or egalitarianism of pop music and rock music, or how like in the world of music criticism, it sounds great, like everything's all equal now, except that that's kind of like flying in the face of fan armies, and fan armies don't like it when you criticize in like the way that you would criticize anything as a rock critic or like a music critic. So there's a tension there already, but point being, I had not really thought, because like you've got TV and there's definitely like a tier system. There's definitely like a layer of I guess what's considered highbrow and lowbrow. If like The Bachelor is at the bottom, or Love is Blind is at like the bottom, anything reality TV, and like the messier it is. I just kind of love it all, is all I'm trying to say.
I mean, you're right. And there is kind of like a flattening, or like a little bit of like a cultural soup, right? Where like nothing really, maybe that hierarchy like dissolves a little bit. But I think like I should clarify, by the way, that like The Bear is an excellent show. It's excellent. It is so well written. The characters are so well drawn. Like, it is a crafted show, but the soundtracking of the show is also like a little messy, which I think is a reflection of the world that you're living in, right? These characters are a fucking mess. And they're also, I think the songs that they chose for it, like they're very lived in, and you're kind of like living in their messy heads and their messy restaurant and environment with them. And there's this kind of like there are rules that I feel like they break in here. Like there are artists that they use like 3 times, I think, in some situations, which is maybe not a cardinal rule of soundtracking, but something that's like generally not done. But we're hearing like Wilco multiple times. We're hearing Counting Crows multiple times. We're hearing The Replacements multiple times. And so it kind of feels like you're listening to like their favorite songs.
Yeah, and some of the songs are used more than once.
Right. Right. And some things are just like really dragged out as well. I think there's like, isn't there like a 9 Inch Nails song that like basically takes up an entire episode in season 1? There's just like, there are some things that are just like they go all in. They're kind of doing like what they want to do, because these are songs that you can tell they have like affection for, and they feel like sort of fit the world of the characters.
Yeah, and like geographically, aren't they also... they're very Midwestern, and like Wilco and Chicago, and it's like very Chicago driven, like with like I think there's like Liz Phair in there, and which that's always fun, just to like see the city represented in the music on screen.
Yeah, there's this line from the GQ article, and I'm just gonna read it because I feel like it's a good like table setting. Despite the fact that there's only 2 dads on the show, The Bear has major dad vibes. Being really into sandwiches, yelling all the time, difficulty expressing your feelings, living in Chicago, please. Like, yeah, like I guess if in that like framework, it is very Midwestern dad energy, as they're calling it. So it's just like you said, there's a lot of like Midwestern bands, and I guess a lot of that Midwestern dad energy. I still struggle with like, how are we even like defining like dad rock? And is dad rock now like, are there things classified as dad rock that are like fundamentally either uncool or like somehow less?
I don't think that, I mean, for whatever it's worth, I don't think that calling something dad rock today, because when I think of dad rock, I think today of like The National.
Yeah, same.
That's immediately the first band that I think of.
Well, they do have those sad dad sweatshirts.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Like they've embraced it.
They're leaning into it. And like Aaron Deser's writing for like Taylor now and stuff.
Yeah. I think that dad rock is a little cooler than maybe like the dad rock of yore. So when we think, I think dad rock seems uncool when we say it, because we conjure images of like middle-aged men with paunches and dockers and like New Balances with too high white socks. they're like missing patches of their like of their like shin hair because of the socks that they've been wearing every day for like the 20 years, and they've got like those old like cell phone holsters around, you know, on their belt buckles, and like they're wearing like an Izod shirt, and this is their uniform, and they're just sort of ever changing, and they're listening to Allman Brothers and driving to the golf course. Dad rock is like what raised me, so this is nothing really against dad rock. Like I grew up listening to Allman Brothers and all the stuff that my dad listened to, just, but I don't think that the dads of today look like the dads of yesterday, so it's a bit of a cognitive dissonance, right?
It is. And I think because like we're all like of a certain age demographic, I'm kind of like, wait a minute, like should I resent this? Like I'm not a dad. I love these things. There's like that needle drop in the season 1 finale. It's the Radiohead letdown moment. Right.
I love that needle drop. Yeah.
It's such a good use of that song where they find the money in the tomato cans. No one knows how. Ryan and I had a really long conversation about it and just decided mob ties. Like that's how they got money in tomato cans.
Oh, they show it in season 2.
Oh, do they? Like, see, I've like, I think part of
like Richie's in like the basement of the restaurant, and you see the machine where you can recan.
Oh, so they're like, people didn't get that. We're gonna put it in season 2. Little
like they don't talk about it, but you can see that that's how it happened.
But yeah, that moment in season 1 where they open the cans, they find the secret money, and then they have like this family dinner as Radiohead's Let Down plays, is to me a perfect needle drop and a perfect season finale for a show that keeps you hanging on by like your fingernails for however many episodes, and then finally you get to breathe for a second. That's one of my favorite ones, I think, in the entire series run so far. It's really great.
And that can't be a cheap needle drop either.
Yeah, I was telling Ryan before we signed on before we started recording, that I think my favorite overall, other than Taylor, needle drop has got to be the Refused New Noise motif that they don't. I think there's only one place, if memory serves, that they do play farther into just the one like guitar riff that opens that song. But you hear that like kind of high pitched, tense guitar riff start almost every time Carmi has like a vision or like a push of inspiration, or is like, all hands on deck now, which happens constantly
all the time.
Yeah. I really do love that, like instead of composing something new, they're using a piece of music that they'd have to license and it already exists. And like, what a cool way to use that. Like, I'm a big fan of Refused. I didn't used to be. It took me a long time to really get into them because for a while I found their vocals too grating to really enjoy. But yeah, truthfully, my ex was a huge Refused fan, and he's really, I have to credit him. He's the one who really got me into them. And then I interviewed them for Spin magazine in 2015, which was really exciting because it felt like it was probably never going to happen again. They reunite, like the band reunited and around 2015, and after sporadic reunions, but like their biggest, most referenced album, and the one that New Noise appears on, is The Shape of Punk to Come. And I've like that's been a really, I think, like just in terms of wanting to write about music, like that's been kind of a like a refresher or something that got me inspired as in my 20s, just for what that band did, and what they continue to do. Internet trolls be damned. I know that not everyone loves the artists that like came after or took inspiration from Refused, but yeah, I just love that, like, because I know that Refused has a pretty hefty fan base, but they are, I think, still like a bit of a cult favorite.
I think so.
I wouldn't call them mainstream, really. But a lot of bands who took inspiration from them are.
Yeah, I would even say at the drive-in when they kind of got really popular, I think they were copying a lot of tactics from Refused.
Yeah. I know that Paramore like has referenced them and geez, I think like The Used or something. I mean, a ton.
A lot of that wave of emo.
Well, obviously like the Hives, who I've seen at least twice in the last few years.
I'm surprised the Hives would allow to be that they would reference anyone as an inspiration.
I actually don't think that the Hives have ever voiced or like vocalized that Refused are an inspiration, but like clearly they are. Like aesthetically, I mean, both bands are like wearing sharp suits or something in that family, and both bands like their music videos. The Hives are like a way poppier, more radio friendly version of Refused in my opinion. I mean, obviously both Swedish,
right?
Yeah, both drawing from punk. I could go on. I'm sorry if I'm rambling.
Well, that is completely fair. Speaking of relationship stuff, so first of all, I feel like the elephant in the room when you talk about the Bear is always like, do we feel like Sid and Carmi are going to be a romantic ship, or do we feel like they're just business partners? Because as soon as people started shipping them on the internet, I'm like, are they a ship? Like, I didn't see it.
I don't see it.
I don't see it. Do you see it, Ryan? Like, do you see it? The chemistry, the potential for like a ship?
Not realistically. I think there can be some tension there because I'm sure they're gonna try to, not in a romantic way, but I think they'll probably. I don't want to speculate. I'll probably cut this out, but I think there's gonna be a little bit of a Claire Carmi, Sid sort of, not love triangle, but like a tension triangle.
All right, so predictions for season 3 is that there's a tension triangle. I mean, I think there's already tension because I think the tension is that she feels Claire and the relationship with Claire is distracting him from starting their business, which is actually very fair. Maybe I'm just more of like a Sid in my own life. But I'm like, yeah, he's like fucking off. Like, you guys are doing all the hard work. So I felt her frustration on that level and maybe wasn't thinking of it so much as she's, jealous in any way.
Yeah. I saw it that way too. I don't know. Carmi as a character, he seems almost like, I don't want to use the term addict, but I think that he, like, when he likes something, he goes for it with such a degree of intensity that it's almost like hard to create any kind of balance.
Totally. And I think psychoanalyzing Carmi would be another hour of podcast because that dude is so deeply fucked up that he shouldn't be in a relationship with anyone.
Yeah. Fully needs to work on himself.
And he is from a family of addicts.
Yeah, and he is. There is
yeah.
like emotion, like for sure, of like addiction and at least like how that kind of like haunts you and kind of maybe like dogs like your life and your decisions. But one of the things that they do with Claire is they have this song called Strange Currencies from R.E.M's Monster album. And it's kind of like a recurring almost like theme between the two of them for season 2, which is really interesting and not something that you see like that often. It's sort of subtle, but it's also kind of not. And I'm not like a huge R.E.M. fan. I think Ryan and I have talked about this before, where it's one of those bands that like I just don't fully get. And maybe if I had been into like college radio at the right time, I would have gotten it more. But yeah, like,
or into college radio.
Yeah, like, right. Like, what even is that? And it's like not a concept that I fully understand. But do we feel like that's the right song to pick for Claire and Carmi's like reconnection, relationship, romance, whatever you want to call it?
I hope that they find their way back to each other.
Are you a Claire Carmi
really
shipper?
I am. I hope that, well, I hope that he is able to, like, I don't think this is going to happen in season 3 because the amount of therapy that character needs is like going to take so much longer than we have TV time for. But he deserves to have some uncomplicated happiness, and I hope that he can find it with a character like Claire. So I hope that they find their way back to each other at some point. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. And to go back to what you were saying about Sid, I think that Sid just like looks up to Carmi as a big brother, best friend. Like they're clearly foil characters to each other, and I think it's very frustrated with his contradictions, and like she wants to throw herself into this thing of like getting a restaurant together and proving to her father that she can do it and that he doesn't need to worry about her. And also like Carmi is like her idol, and then when she sees him like ostensibly fucking off and placing his attention elsewhere, it's like she just becomes so upset by it because she like needs him to get this thing across the finish line, but she's also like frustrated. It's kind of like when you're frustrated with someone, like look at yourself and what are some things that they're frustrated that you're frustrated by that are within you. So I don't see it as romantic though.
No, and I think when I watched her sort of standalone episode in season 2, and you realize that like this is truly her passion, because her episode is just her trying a bunch of food, trying to perfect recipes, trying to figure out in a very serious way like what this restaurant is going to be, and she doesn't want to be abandoned in that dream that they're trying to build together. I don't see that as romantic. So for anyone listening, I don't know, maybe like, have you ever had like a business partner? I don't know. Have you ever had a dream? Or do you just need these people to be together because they're both like, because Sid's so likable? Maybe that's it too. I feel like Sid could have chemistry with anyone. Like Io can have chemistry with anyone.
Yeah. Even if you're spending that amount of time with someone, there's bound to be some kind of transference, and maybe that's just what people are picking up on.
And I just think she's very like, as an actress and as a character, like very magnetic. Even when she's like shanking Richie, it's sort of like you still like her. Not many people could pull that off.
Yeah,
thinking you an ass, but like also like you're still on my side. I feel like the other character in this, I'm gonna talk about like, because I feel like every character has kind of like a song tied to it, but maybe like somewhat unofficially. But the other character in the show is like the city. It's Chicago. There's a lot of songs that are very like blatantly about the city or about Chicago. I spent like all of season 1 like waiting for like Sufjan Stevens. I don't know if anybody else did. Well,
did they use Sufjan ultimately?
They do, and it's like a weird version of it, right, Ryan? Yeah. Like we've discussed this weird version of it.
So they use Chicago, because obviously, but they use a demo version of Chicago. And if you were obsessed with Illinois when it came out, I think he released like 3 different versions. There was the album version, and then they came out with the Avalanche, basically bonus songs album, which had, I believe, what he called the adult contemporary version of Chicago and some sort of pretty acoustic version of Chicago. And it's none of these 3. It's the 4th version of Chicago that they use in the episode. And I remember after I had watched it and I texted Nicole, she was like, why do you think they used this specific version of Chicago? And I was like, I don't know. It's probably the grittiest sounding one. And, I think one thing about the character of Chicago in The Bear is they're trying to highlight kind of this more like working class kind of part of Chicago. Like they're not in the loop where, you have like kind of the nice trendy restaurants and bars. It's a much more work, which is kind of weird that like Carmi wants to create this fine dining restaurant in what used to be a very kind of working class, the bones of his brother's restaurant. Like I get the symbolism of wanting to like kind of revive and rebirth and all that stuff, but it's a weird location for like a fine dining restaurant, and that's what they're trying to show on the show is like this kind of more working class part of Chicago where like you can do drug deals in the alley and not like, you know, this is where all the celebrity chefs and breweries are, you know. This is not where Ryan hangs out when he goes to Chicago. This is where the locals go.
Right. Like, well, I love the scene in like the very first episode, right, where like Richie has to like pull a gun on the like cosplayers that are youth, you know, and it's played like very casually, like it was kind of normal, and then at some point like somebody shoots through like the window of a restaurant. It's like kind of normal. Everybody brushes it off, like it's just another day.
I've only been to Chicago. I feel very out of my depth if I ever like have to talk about Chicago because I've only ever been there one time, and it was just for Lollapalooza, and I didn't really get a chance to dig into it and see some of the neighborhoods that like tourists wouldn't otherwise go to. So it's a blind spot for me culturally. Although when I was there, I remember everybody, if they found out I was like, it was my first time there, they almost always like, without fail, oh, it's your first time in Chicago? Are you a foodie?
Right, because that's, you know, like sort of what it's known for, right? Is being like a big foodie city.
Yeah.
Did you get some Chicago deep dish pizza?
I did, in fact. And I think it's really funny that because I was living in New York, and Chicagoans that I met were almost like preemptively defensive about their pizza and their food scene. And coming from New York, like, no, I mean, New York is not defensive about anything. Least of all its food. It's just like, yeah, we're the best. We know.
New York's aggressive about everything.
Yeah,
not
whatever.
defensive.
And and I think I was just like, hey, this is a different kind of pizza and it tastes delicious. Although I should say I had deep dish long before I ever went to Chicago because one of my best friends is from Chicago, and then I remember for one of her birthday parties in New York, she had moved to New York, and we were both there, and I think she had deep dish from Chicago, like specially shipped for her birthday, and we just all ate deep dish for her birthday as like a celebration of her. And I just remember thinking, this is a fun way to eat pizza
with the fork and knife.
Maybe not the default. This is a fun interpretation of pizza.
Right? Like, I don't want to start a war with, like, cities over pizzas and like, particularly deep dish, right? Like, I feel like, other than, like, not talking shit about Taylor Swift, that's one thing that, like, I don't want to talk about pizzas. Because, like, people will come for you if you try to talk about, like, their city's food culture. But I will just say, like, it's a lot of fucking pizza. I used to work with, it was the same way. You would have it, like, special ordered and, like, trucked into the office. Like, no. Like, this is it. This is the only pizza that exists to me. And that is a strong way to feel about your city. But what I will say is that at least like in the Bear, they kind of embrace this strong persona that the city has, and the architecture of it, you know, all of these like skyscrapers and like brutalist buildings. There's a really great needle drop where they use David Byrne's Glass, Concrete, and Stone, which is a song I love. I feel like it's a very underrated like David Byrne solo song that people like forget exists. And it's very on the nose, right? It's like literally like B-roll of buildings, and it's glass, concrete, and stone. But it's satisfying, you know? It's like, I love that song. I'm looking at the city. I love the city just as much as like, you know, the Berzados do.
Yeah, I forgot about the Pretty in Pink needle drop with psychedelic furs, and I would love to do a whole episode at some point of NSYNC about just like some good John Hughes era movie needle drops. Like Pretty in Pink has one of my favorite soundtracks. I think we talked about this.
We did Pretty in Pink with you.
We did, yeah. And we talked about, it's kind of the same deal where it's like there's a lot of like shots of like trains. You know, there's the train, and then like cool needle drop plus train equals like great little interstitial like moment that gets you into the show or that like transitions you to the next scene.
Oh, and here's some nerdy foodie detail from the show is so in the episode review with the Sufjan needle drop, it's doing all this B-roll of the city before everything goes to shit at the restaurant. And one of the things they take a shot of in the B-roll is Pequod's Pizza, which in the next season, Forks, where Richie's working at Olivia Colman's restaurant, he overhears that family saying, "Oh, this is our first time in Chicago. We wanted to try deep dish pizza, blah, blah, blah." And then he basically bolts out of the restaurant to pick up an order, Pequod's Pizza. So, and then they dress it up for the guests, and he gets in trouble for yelling, "Fuck yeah, microgreens." or fuck yeah, micro basil. And they go, language.
I love that little like that's such a cool detail of that like that surprise and delight like wrapping up like something from a previous episode. Like it's a cool show that way, and you can tell like it's very lived in, and the creators like really love like calling back to that stuff. So I think that's why it's so satisfying to watch. Partially is that the world does feel like very real. We're very invested in it. In like unhealthy ways, because it's like the most unhealthy and chaotic thing that you can probably like do to yourself if you watch too many episodes of this at once.
Yeah.
That's why Rachel earlier was like, Ryan, did you binge all of this? Like, and are you okay?
I binged as much as my wife would allow us to binge.
But you talked about Forks though, and I feel we've talked around a little bit like this big Taylor Swift love story needle drop that happens in Forks, and Rachel's done like an entire like episode of her pod about it. Forks is maybe one of the best episodes of the show. I feel like it's like a staggering episode of television.
It's like, I think I was trying to think about it. I think it might be my favorite episode of the whole series because of like the character growth ultimately. Like this show is so intense. Everybody is screaming at each other regardless of environment. So they're screaming at each other within the restaurant scene, which okay, that has to happen. And then they're screaming at each other in their homes with their families. It's like, it's kind of this like mirror one-to-one, like you have your actual family and all the inherited trauma, and then you have your quote unquote like restaurant family, like when you sit down for your family dinner before you actually open the restaurant, and there's different kind of family, and there's all this dysfunction, especially with this group of people. And it's hard to imagine that anybody living with this kind of like constant dysfunction that is shown, it's made especially clear, if it wasn't already clear, it's made especially clear in the Christmas episode. I just wanted to jump out the window after the Christmas episode. It was just so hard. I mean, a beautiful, great episode, but just so hard to live through. But then like to see a character like Richie, who you don't even think is like the cynic in you doesn't think is capable of change and evolution, for him to like kind of come out of season 2 as like the most evolved character,
right?
That like in the way that they show it and the way that it's earned and the way that Taylor Swift kind of that needle drop like ties a little bow on it. Wow. I love just all the elements coming together to show that so beautifully. Yeah, Forks was by far my favorite.
It's so good. And I don't know about you two, but I mean, I figured Richie from the beginning of the show would be just completely unredeemable.
Yes.
Like, what an absolute asshole. There's no way you could redeem this character. He is a fuck up of colossal proportions. And then slowly through season 2, by the time you get to Forks and you see the evolution of him actually wanting to make good and to be a decent person and to be invested, by the end of the season 2, like he's actually, running the restaurant and like saving the night essentially.
Yeah.
And like really trying. And a lot of the flashbacks with his ex-wife, you see that like he is a guy who, for better or for worse, is trying. And you kind of get to understanding him. The other thing I love about this love story Needle Drop is that there's, speaking of like details in the show that kind of feel like Easter eggs, in the episode where you get the flashback to him and the woman from Community, which is how I think of her.
Gillian Jacobs.
Gillian Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you. Gillian Jacobs, who is his ex-wife, and you get this flashback of them where she's pregnant with their child and she's like she's having, like sickness, and she's got like her Taylor Swift like 1989 shirt on, right? And so you know that like that song not only means something to him in that moment as he's like, totally like driving too fast, like over hills, like in the city, and like pounding the ceiling of the car, like singing along, but it's also him trying to kind of like make good with her in some way. Like there's a very satisfying sort of wrap up to that scene. And it's just really cool to see somebody like speed through Chicago, like blaring that song and like singing at the top of their lungs.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think there's an episode also earlier where he's with his daughter, and then I think he drops her off and he's having a conversation with someone, and it was like, I can't deal with Taylor Swift right now. Like
he's saying to his daughter, I had to, like, I love Taylor Swift, I just needed a break.
Yeah,
or something like that.
So that Taylor Swift needle drop really like feels earned. It's not like kind of
it's not throwaway.
Yeah, it's not a gimmick. It feels like, really earned as far as like the character development and like why they used it, and it's not just like, oh, wouldn't it be funny for this guy to be singing Taylor Swift in the car? Like you get it.
He feels really far away from, definitely in season 1, he feels really far away from his family, like his when I say family, I mean like Gillian Jacobs' character and his daughter. I don't think you even see either of them until season 2.
And the daughter's in season 1 because she talks to him. He talks to her on the phone when he's with Sid, and they go to the hardware store.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
But I feel like between like his work at Forks, and then also like you just get the sense that when you first meet Richie, you feel like he's irredeemable, and that like you think that because he's pushing back against Carmy so much when Carmy comes back to run their restaurant, the brothers restaurant, you think because he's pushing back so much that he must really care about this place, but it's not like him really caring about. He's just kind of ground into this loop, this rhythm that he's always been in, Richie has, and he only really knows how to express himself in like one way, and he doesn't like change, and he's had a lot of bad stuff happen to him, and he's just all reactive, and he doesn't like know where to channel that, and like whatever he cares about, it's like he doesn't know where to put it or how to even process the bad stuff. And then it's like with Forks and with simultaneously launching the new restaurant, the Bear, right? Yeah, the titular Bear. It's like by being like disciplined and cleaning the forks, and by doing these repetitive things every single day. It's almost like going into the army. I don't know. It's like gives him like a way to deal, and then like he's come through it on the other side, like bettering himself. And then it's like that song shows his now like closeness, a closeness that didn't that like if it existed, it was no longer there. Now he's like close to himself, to his daughter, even to his ex, and he's like kind of come out of that pool of anger that he just could not get out of.
That's so true. That's such a good comparison between like this kind of like army basic training. It feels very similar, like that he comes out of that like literally with a uniform, with the suit that he's now kind of like embraced and donned. Like, this is what makes me feel like the best version of myself, and like I can do this. And then I just love how this needle drop is also like it's a private moment for him. So that callback to like, I'm sick of Taylor Swift, you would kind of think that like he's never going to admit to his bros and all like the manly dudes in the show that he's singing this song. But like in his like highest moment where he's this elated, this is his go-to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another Richie related needle drop is Pearl Jam's Animal, which
That's
is
more...
the end credits song for the pilot. And then it shows up again when he takes over the expo and helps kind of sort out the orders at the Bear when things are going to shit. And it goes from Wilco's Spider's Kid Smoke, which was first used in the review episode where everything literally goes to shit. And Carmi's, throwing Marcus's donuts on the floor and then eating them. But anyway, so it goes from Spiders into Pearl Jam's Animal when Richie kind of takes control and helps kind of and it's so satisfying. I'm not even a big Pearl Jam fan, but when that riff kicks back in, it's like, yeah, Richie's gonna kick some ass.
It feels good. And there's a lot of songs like because there are all these chaotic like kitchen scenes that they kind of like they're in the background and they're a little maybe like muffled or that you're not absorbing them fully, and then they kind of kick into a higher gear, they get a little bit louder, they bleed into each other like as these extended scenes of like just total fucking melting down. You almost miss them, and then like you think about them a little bit later, like, oh yeah.
I like the use of like diegetic versus non-diegetic within this series. I hadn't really thought about it that way until Nicole, you just like phrase like the sort of background songs, like the kind of passive listening, but they really hold a lot of meaning too, and what these characters like would listen to. And maybe the thing about dad rock too is that like a lot of these characters aren't necessarily seeking out new music. You know what I mean? Like they're probably listening to whatever they grew up with. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, they're not evolving. Maybe that's part of it too, is that like they're not necessarily, they don't have the time to like
they don't have the time.
They're not on Spotify. Like what's the late that's not a priority for them. The priority is just, this is kind of like their world and what's on and like an ambient maybe environment or what's in their heads. And it's very dense with that type of music. I think there is some intention too to thinking about what people would naturally gravitate towards. The Christmas flashback episode, there's just a random like Lindsey Buckingham song called I Want You on it. And I guess the showrunners were like, we were thinking of Donna, who is their mom, making a Christmas playlist, but then she forgot all this other shit was on there. So it's basically like them saying like, yeah, Donna would definitely be a Lindsey Buckingham fan. Like she's a Fleetwood Mac fan because she's messy and she's loving like some 70s rock.
And she'd also forget like that Holiday Road is right there by Lindsey Buckingham, but she's not going to put it in the playlist.
True.
Yeah, and that episode ends with Weezer's Christmas song, which I haven't listened to in forever, but I remember that when I was in college. It was before they had kind of fully reunited to do the Green album, so like there was this Weezer gap. And it was like one of the few like B-sides that they hadn't released somehow. So it came out on like some K-Rock sampler, and like I had to get it because
of course
it was like
K-Rock sampler, like absolutely, like
K-Rock Christmas sampler, I believe.
I love that.
And I was like, oh, it's the one Weezer song I've never heard.
Yeah. Oh, you California kids. I don't even remember how I came across like Christmas song, but I do remember Suzanne was kind of that for me, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't even remember where Suzanne. It was like a B-side, right?
It was a B-side, and then they used it in Mallrats.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, Mallrats.
Yeah, my Weezer knowledge between like 95 and 99 is really strong.
Oh, you and my friend who I'm going to Glasgow with for the Glasgowian weekender. You and her, yeah. She's like the I think #1 Weezer fan of that era. She like spent all her time on message boards and stuff. Like she went down rabbit holes I never went down. Although I was a major Weezer fan, but I didn't mind the Green album.
I've seen Weezer with Mikey Welsh on bass.
Awesome.
That very small period of time when Mikey Welsh was the bassist.
Yeah.
That's a true fan. I've probably told this before, but like I feel like everyone of our, again, like age bracket has kind of like some connection to Weezer, or at the very least like the Blue Album. Like we were all obsessed with Weezer at some point. It's just whether or not you're willing to like admit it.
Oh, fully happy to admit it. I even bought Maladroit and liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and then after that I was just like, what's happening here? What are we doing? What's happening? So yesterday I went and got a tattoo, and just in talking, it was a new artist, a new tattoo artist that I just had found on Instagram, and she said that most of her clients were people in music, of course, and chefs.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's something I hadn't considered before the bear. Apparently, it is a thing to get.
Jeremy Allen White doesn't have tattoos in real life, right? They give him these like sleeves in the show or these tats in the show.
Well, I know he has one because I remember seeing it every episode or so of Shameless, which I did watch. Yeah, he has that triangle tattoo, I think, on his chest. I'm pretty sure that's real.
Okay.
And everything else, IDK. But I'm sure a lot of those are painted on for the show.
Yeah, I know at least some of them are, but I've never like extensively considered Jeremy Allen White's like naked torso. Maybe I should.
You could watch that Iron Claw movie and see for yourself.
I heard that was so sad, and like knowing kind of the backstory behind it, I'm like, I don't know if I can handle that. And so I've just like put that off. Have you guys seen it? Is it good?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I have seen the Calvin Klein ads though. Speaking of Jeremy Allen White's torso, I'm not disappointed by the ads.
I'm not disappointed. It's not disappointing at all.
The ads are giving.
A little guy though. He's just like a little guy.
Yeah, he's 5'7", I believe.
Hey, you know what? You know what? I'm married to a 5'7" guy.
We love a short king. Like I think he's just like he's packing it all in, Jeremy Allen.
Yeah. Honestly, like quick anecdote. I usually dated like tall jerks. Just like real spindly slender men.
Slenderman makes them sound like true villains.
Yeah.
Like
that was like my pattern for so long. And well, my husband, he is my like physical type in almost every other way. But then when we met online, and then I remember thinking before we met, I was like, I think he might be comparatively speaking on the smaller end of the boys of my pattern. But let's just see. You know what? I don't care. Whatever. I'm 5'7", so whatever. I didn't know exactly how tall he was. And then we met. I was just like, you're just a great looking man. You know what I mean? Like, it's all in how you rock it. There can be some really tall and spindly guys with no swag, and you're just like, eh. And then it's all about how you carry yourself. And I was just like, yep. Okay, snap my fingers, done. You're it. You're it.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of not Jeremy Allen White's body, but working class figures, working class heroes, and things of that nature. Since Ryan is wearing his Minnesota shirt today, I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the replacements needle drops, because I've been waiting to ask Ryan about them for a really long time.
Oh yeah, let's talk. I mean, I got engaged the day after the Replacements reunited in Minneapolis.
That's so
like
cool.
That's your important like band, I feel.
Yeah, like when my wife at the time, I got the tickets, and I wasn't like, she's not a huge Replacements fan, so I was just like, oh, I'm gonna go to Minnesota for the show, and she was like, oh, so we're going? That's cool. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, time to do some planning. You know, it was kind of it was the reaction you wanted your significant other to have, like, oh, we're gonna go back to your hometown for this really important show, and like, yeah, let's go. Like, you're not even I didn't even like officially ask her. She was just like, oh, cool, we're going. But yeah, there's an episode that is that has 2 replacement songs in there. And the last one is this big climactic moment. You Can't Hardly Wait, and you get Carmi and Claire making out in
That's a great
The bear.
scene. Chills. Just got chills.
Right? There's like literally lights flashing, lights that flash in the evening, like to match the lyrics, because I think like these showrunners love like an on the nose, like needle drop. But it all works. And like, even though that's like a crazy depressing song, like I love like a depressing lyric to like an upbeat like tempo. And that's
Me
definitely like the
too.
quintessential like example of that to me. So great moment in the show, great needle
Yeah.
drop. You also get like Bastards of Young in that show, or in that same episode,
earlier in the
right?
episode.
Yeah.
And then in the background, like Maddie Matheson's character is talking about like how much he loves the Replacements. The showrunners really love the Replacements, and they, have talked about like how basically these songs are just here because they love them, like because they love the band, and for like no other reason.
You can't go wrong with Replacements needle drop. And I love that they pulled out Bastards of Young, because I don't think I've seen that. I mean, I remember listening to that song in particular as a teenager because Billy Joe Armstrong said he liked it, and like that's what inspired Green Day, or partially what helped inspire Green Day. And I was just like, oh wow, I gotta check out this band called The Replacements, and I gotta listen to this song called Bastards of Young. And then like now I'm remembering hearing it on the bear and just being and like fist pumping the air. Like, yeah.
It's another one. It's just like, the Pearl Jam moment. You're like, yeah, because it fits so well. Like, they literally, like, these characters are like the kind of embodiments of that song. Like, they feel.
That's pretty fair. Like, Carmi is a Replacement song.
He is kind of like a living, like a walking, talking Replacement song in a lot of ways, right? Like this alienation and this like family dysfunction.
Except he doesn't drink.
Yeah, right. Yeah, except for that very small thing.
Another soundtrack that I really like that uses the Replacements a little bit, Adventureland.
Oh,
yep,
great.
16 Blue, right?
Yeah, I love that movie.
Me too. That's a rewatch that I enjoy.
Talking about movies that just kind of feel like downers the entire time.
Yeah, but like coming of age downers. They're like rewarding, emotionally resonant, rewarding coming of age downers. Like I think my favorite movie genre.
It was probably the first time where I was like, oh, like Ryan Reynolds is not just like a human cartoon.
Yeah, right? He was a dick in that movie.
But I was like, oh, he's a real human. Like he can.
You understand why he's a dick.
Yeah.
Because he never left. He never left Adventureland.
Kind of like a Ben Affleck in Dazed and Confused.
Very, very, similar.
Except he wasn't trying to paddle people at Adventureland.
Yeah, Adventureland's that's like a really underrated everything. Everything's so underrated about that movie.
Yeah, I need to go back.
Right, underrated. Sure. Yeah, right. Like I don't know why it doesn't make more noise, but I don't know. It feels like one of those things, like especially with Kristen Stewart being like at the place in her career where she is, like maybe people will start rediscovering it or something. It's not like super old, but
no, I feel like it was kind of. Well, I think she made it around the time that she was still like in the Twilight,
in the saga,
and Adventureland got like subsumed by Twilight.
But you're probably exactly right. I think that's what it was. I think people were not taking her seriously as they should have at that time.
Yeah, they were more focused on her personal life at that point.
Very unfair to her. I'm glad she's getting her flowers. But yes, working class Replacement sounds feel like so perfectly matched to this show, and it made me so happy to hear them. I think that's what like the soundtracking in the show is really good at too. It's good at like the lifting you out or lifting you up of like a particular moment, which is nice. It's almost like for me, it kind of like alleviates a little bit of the like pressurized feelings that it, because it is also like, I know it's like a very dark comedy, but I also do find aspects of this show really fucking funny. There are moments in this show that are very funny. So much like you get some comedy relief with, like episodes like the one where all the kids get like drugged on Ecto Cooler.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Which I think Ryan and I have talked about. Like, that whole moment is played for, like, to me, like, the highest comedy. It's, like, very funny.
Yeah.
But
Well,
music
also Cicero's response to it was just like, eh.
I like it. Yeah.
I feel like you need to have some comedy in the show, like somewhere, just to balance out the stress. Otherwise, no one would be able to get through it.
Totally. Comedy and the music are like release valves almost, because it is like a really hard show to watch. There are moments where you kind of feel like you're so in there with them, you like can't breathe. I know people in the service industry that are like, fuck that, I cannot watch this show. Fair.
Yeah, I think we interviewed the our guest for NSYNC for the Bear. She wasn't able to watch it. We interviewed her, I think, just like, hey, so what's your experience like? It just turned into more of a discussion of why unions are needed in the service industry.
Yeah,
But her and anyone else I've talked to who either recently or currently works in the service industry, they cannot bring themselves to watch it. And I don't blame them. I can barely watch it, and I've never worked in the service industry.
Yeah,
Same.
Our friend who works in the service industry says he can watch it, but like he needs breaks. Like he can't just go like, oh, we're gonna watch 5 episodes this week, because some episodes are too much. It hits too close to home. He says some things are not as accurate, but for the most part, I mean, I think Chris Store's like siblings work at restaurants. Like I think they're consultants on the show, so it's more accurate than it's not. But I don't know. My friend said he can watch it, but just not a lot at a time.
Small
Which
bites.
is probably the healthy way to like consume this particular show. Like that's healthier. I remember like when I was watching it really extensively, but going like, because I didn't watch season 1 in real time, I would watch like a couple episodes a night, and I would want to watch more, but I'm like, no, it's not good for you. Don't do it.
Yeah. This you need to small plate this show.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Tapa size. Yeah.
I don't think we ever watched more than 2 in one night, and then if it was like an episode over 45 minutes, that would be its own night.
And then like wash it down with an episode of Parks and Rec or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially after Christmas.
After. Yeah. Christmas episode was really something else. So beautifully done. But Lord, I'm really happy for Jeremy Allen White. Speaking of people who are getting their flowers, because like he committed so much of his time and life, like, and career to date to Shameless. Did either of you watch Shameless?
Running show, right? Like I haven't seen Shameless.
That's
I've
William
heard
H. Macy's show, right?
about it, yeah, and but it was on for a long time, right?
Something like 11 seasons.
So that is like a really huge commitment, and maybe a little bit of like a box to be in, but he is. It goes without saying, like he's incredible on the show.
You can see why he would be cast based on like in The Bear in this role, based on the character he played in Shameless. Both are Chicago residents, although I am not sure. Do either of you remember where Carmi's character, like what neighborhood is he from the south side of Chicago, or no?
Yeah, I can't recall, and it's probably because I'm not like knowledgeable of neighborhood geography. Do you know, Ryan?
No.
If they say
Lip is he's incredibly smart. He's like another kind of genius, like not a food genius, but he's like, well, his family has nothing, and there's a bunch of them, and his parents are incredibly unreliable, but he's like the secret genius, and everyone in the family is kind of hoping that he'll go on to really make something of himself. And that's kind of like that character's central tension, is that he has all this potential and he's really academically smart and has the ability to really go somewhere out of like the south end of Chicago and really get himself out of that neighborhood. But like his comfort zone is still like the South Chicago and like the lifestyle, like the working class lifestyle, and like if when he's actually in school, like among other like people who are also really bright and going places, but like they're from a completely different type of community, and they all like understand certain etiquette that Lip wasn't raised with, and has to like, you know, now be confronted with, and just act like he always knew. So you can kind of see why like Carmi would be like almost like a natural extension of Lip.
Yeah, they sound, you know, very much like related, like cousins.
The Berzados are from River North, Chicago, which is near the north side. I don't know if I've ever been there.
I can say that I have not.
One last thing about the detail that the show pays attention to. I was telling Nicole about this. So in the beginning of season 2, he's talking to Claire, and she's like, oh, when we were in school, you would always draw like these pants. And he's like, oh yeah, like I had an idea for like really high quality short pants. And he makes some comment about how he never got to do it, but the guy who ended up doing it, the designer who did it, ended up eating at one of his restaurants. And Reddit says that he's talking about Tom Brown, the designer Tom Brown.
Oh, well, aren't the I may have this wrong because I don't think I've done this deep dive exactly, but the chef coat that he gets for it is Tom Brown, correct?
Yeah, so at the end of season 2, he gifts Sydney the chef coat, the signature chef coat, and it's a Tom Brown chef coat, and someone on Reddit priced it at about $2,500.
That's a pricey meatball. That's an expensive chef's coat.
Wow.
Maybe they are in love.
Yeah.
The attention to detail that this show pays is to have little things like that pay off for like the biggest of nerds.
It's definitely a very rewarding show, and you do want, you know, the most for these characters. You find yourself very invested in their world and their successes and their failures, and I think that's why it's so affecting and so hard to watch too many episodes at once, because it's kind of crushing when shit fails. Like you feel it on a fairly deep level, and this is just us talking about like a few of the main characters and not even like talking about all of the peripheral characters as well, and all of the other characters that get time. I could devote a whole episode to how deeply I want Marcus to be okay.
Oh my god, me too.
Like poor Marcus.
And how bad you feel for Sugar.
I mean, it's a lot, right? Like there are a lot of characters in here that have like deep wells of like stories attached to them. It's very dense with characters and storytelling and music too. So it's just kind of like not a fun world to live in, but a very like satisfying one.
Yeah, I remember thinking when I was watching season 2 that like so much of this show is couched in change and how people deal with it and like the inevitability of it, and loving, like becoming emotionally invested in characters, and like you want them to embrace change because you the viewer know that it's inevitable, and like you want to see them succeed, and like just feeling like internalizing the disappointment when they can't always rise to the occasion.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's realistic in showing growth, but how quickly you can revert back to your former self before. And I think they show that really well in like Forks, where like Richie is kicking ass, and then he talks to his ex-wife who's like, oh, I'm gonna marry this new guy, and then like he calls Carmen, who's like, you set me up, you wanted me to fail, and it's like, hey, where'd this come from? And it's like, because
yeah, it's something like when you are around family, you know how when you go home again and you're with your family, like your parents and maybe your siblings or something, it's like you do revert in ways, and like those old dynamics that you don't take with you like as an individual suddenly are just existing again. It's almost like that.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah.
but like even like when Richie and Carmi are yelling at each other, like you can tell of the history between the characters.
Yes. So that's the thing that I think the show does a really good job of like building kind of these like unsaid and unseen like histories and connections that are there. Like that there's a lot of love behind like all of that bitching at each other, which is why he lets Richie continue to exist at all, like within the framework of the restaurant, right? Because he's whatever. He's their cousin.
Mm-hmm.
He's Bam. Do you guys have any like thoughts on what we're going to hear next season for music? Because I definitely had like last season like this song in my mind that I thought was going to pop up and then it like didn't. Like, what do we predict? Are we going to hear Counting Crows like 5 more times? Are we going to get like Crane Wife Part 2 since we got Crane Wife Part 1?
Well, I think it's technically Crane Wife Part 3.
Is it? Okay, well, gotta revisit my Crane Wives.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm excited to be surprised with familiarity. I think whatever it is, it will be like comfortably familiar and also like unexpected.
I think we will get more REM. They seem to like REM every season.
They do really. They're like avowed fans of REM, so that feels like it's gonna happen. You mentioned the National earlier, and so I feel like the National's maybe like the one band that they haven't. And I'm like, why is it like Lemon World or something?
But
like,
is
not
the National too cool for?
I don't see the National is like, I don't feel like it's too cool at all.
No.
I think like 5 years ago maybe.
We're not above the National at all.
If they play the National, I bet it'll be like a much older cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see a fake Empire needle drop.
Fake Empire, yeah. It's not
I was gonna say like boxer, pre-boxer.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
that's such a good call. Okay, that's the call. Let's see if that happens.
Definitely REM though. Agree with you, Ryan.
And they love Nine Inch Nails. There were like 3 different Nine Inch Nails songs, I think, which is really surprising.
And a lot of Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Right, like it's not. It is and it isn't, because like obviously, who doesn't love them? Especially for soundtracks right now, but a little surprising.
I would like to hear some Veruca Salt. Let's go back. They're a Chicago band too.
There you go.
It'd be cool to hear like something like post-rockish. Like, do you remember Tortoise?
Oh yeah, Tortoise would be great.
That's Tortoise.
And they're from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
That would be fun. Yeah.
Or maybe some Jim O'Rourke.
Maybe some Spoon.
I think Spoon is too cool for the Bear.
Yeah, Spoon is too cool because Spoon feels very much like in the same family of like.
I agree. Aesthetically, I agree.
I don't know. I think it could work.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Spoon and eating, I have not had lunch yet, so I need to go do that soon.
Neither have I. I also have to go. I have to go to like a late lunch with my mother. I'm gonna brag to my mother about your Time magazine article. I have nothing to say, but I'm gonna be like, I just talked to someone who wrote for Time magazine.
My friend, my Time magazine writer friend. We just talked to them.
I'm gonna see how long can I milk that? How long can I keep that?
Right,
like all my bios.
Like, what's new with you? I'm gonna be like, nothing. But I know someone that wrote for Time magazine, so prestige adjacent. What?
You guys are incredibly kind, and I appreciate you both.